All right, let's begin this tutorial picking up where we left off, just as an overview of the flow of level 2 processing. I want to let's understand sort of where we're headed by looking at the data that I've downloaded for this particular example, a level 1A file. If I open that in SeaDAS and look at the rasters for this VIRS file and hover over one of these rasters, of which there are quite a few, okay? What I discover is level 1A data is divided into the bands, the medium resolution bands 6 through 16, okay? And each of those band files is really just chopped up into 16 pixel sweeps of the scanner. So if I just open one of these, this sliver of data is revealed, and it's not very useful, and you don't want to try to do anything meaningful with this directly. So that is sort of our motivation for converting this to a level 2 file. Right, so we do that with the level 1 processing for VIRS. Okay, we have a geo file, so we don't need to extract a geolocation file, but we do need to convert the L1A to L1B. Now the fact is, and let me illustrate, cancel that this does not need to be open for this operation. So I'm just going to close that. We have an empty SeaDAS session here. We go to calibrate VIRS. Okay, and it presents us with this window. We click here and we select our L1A file. Okay. Now what it does is it, from that file path, derives a sort of canonical L1B -M file for output. None of this other stuff is required. We simply run. And this is a fairly quick process for it to run, and what it does is it actually writes the output file. So there's not any internal SeaDAS file management going on through here, but we should get a notification window when that is finished. There we go. So we click OK. If I return to my file browser in the operating system, we see we now have an L1B file. Okay. Now we can proceed to level 2, to the level 2 processing. All right, and that I'm going to simply overview the UI and before we really walk through. Okay, that is a much more involved user interface. Okay, LTGen. We have several tabs here that give us options for, groups of options for the level 2 processing stage. Okay, the main is the one where we select an input file. So I'm going to go ahead and select the level 1B file here, because what you will see is it detects the geo file automatically, so make sure that it has automatically found the geo file and automatically derived an output file name that makes sense to you and is in the correct directory, and so on. These three fields, after you choose a file, they should autofill, and you can focus your attention now on this parameter area. So what's going to happen is you're going to make selections throughout this user interface. You're going to choose what products you want to generate, perhaps the Rayleigh corrected reflectances, perhaps you want water leaving radiances here, and you can turn these out and see what bands you can choose, subsets, and so on. And you can, the meat of the processing is in this this processing options window, where you choose what really do you want it to do to generate those products. Do you want it to do atmospheric correction and so on? The subsetting options theoretically let you carve out a region of the entire data file that you're working with. But experience tells me, especially with virs, it's best to just grit your teeth and let it run through all of the data file, because in the case of virs especially, there are missing pixels at the extremities of the swath that have to do with bow tie and the curvature of the Earth. And if you subset the data prematurely, namely here in the level 2 processing, it's unable to really fill those in correctly when you reproject that subset data. What we will find with virs is we need to reproject the entire data file, the granule, if you will, the chunk of data that you've downloaded, and then subset that result in the end to get the data we want to really focus on. Some of these options for L2Gen, the thresholds, I never really fool with. The ancillary inputs are taken care of for you, and we'll see how the inherent optical properties is not something I've particularly worked with. And miscellaneous has one important setting here, which is what resolution do you want the output in. You can, the moderate bands in virs, you can oversample by requesting 250 meter output. The inherent data isn't that high of a resolution, but you can, choose to just generate a higher resolution resulting data file. What you'll also notice, for example, back here on products, there's an asterisk on that tab's title name that reflects the fact that I've changed something from the defaults. I've modified it. So I've checked something or unchecked something from what it normally would read. And that kind of, that behavior, if I were to choose, for example, suddenly that tab now has an asterisk showing me that it's been modified in some way, and that can help me, double check that I've chosen the options that I want to work with. Okay, but the flow through here generally is to, look at the main. We're going to choose our level 1B file. We're going to choose the processing suite for the sensor we're working with. Well, in the case of virs, we're going to choose MPP. That helps the level 2 processing know what modules to utilize for the processing that are appropriate to this satellite. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to download ancillary data files that are required for the processing. So there is an online archive of ancillary data assigned to each day of data capture that have to do with ozone and meteorology and so on. And these will possibly be used in the level 2 processing. So you need to preload those basically. But you notice as I clicked that, it filled in some new options in this main area here. This text here defines the configuration for your level 2 processing. So once you've chosen all your options, if you think you might need to rerun it and tweak that set of settings just a little bit, you can save these settings out to a text file and then start your processing by reloading it. But understand that that parameter file is very much tied to the data that the single data file that you're working with here. Returning again to the flow through this, you would choose products. You might, keep it simple and just choose a couple, right? If I go back to main, now I've got products added, okay? I will note that in the case of Veers, it generates productivity products, and it seems to need those. If I uncheck those from the products by default, things don't seem to behave quite right. So just let it go ahead and derive those even if you don't need them. Okay, you can click apply here and it will sort of double check that things are looking okay. And as you pick processing options, for example, if I were to disable atmospheric correction, notice we get an asterisk. We've changed it from the defaults. Our processing options have changed, and our main has been hidden. So we click this left arrow to get back access to the main tab, and we've now got a processing option added to this configuration file. So as we check and uncheck defaults, things are going to kind of be logged here in this settings file, and when you click run, the settings are going to apply to the level 2 processing. It will crunch the numbers and give you a result. Now, again, typically you should walk through these, changing things, come back to the main, click apply, because sometimes you'll get a little warning. There might be a little warning statement embedded in this text telling you that something doesn't look quite right. You've specified a file that isn't there, or if I think if I were to maybe do that and apply warning, okay, it doesn't see that file, okay, so it's hidden in a comment here in some respects, but you just need to scan this text file. It doesn't get very large, but scan it for information that's trying to tell you that something's not right. Okay, so let me go back and re-pick my level 1B file, select, and notice when I do that, it's going to refill things in, but it's also going to reinitialize this configuration. And that's important to understand, because you can't load an old parameter file, then try to override the data files that it has in it, because the minute you pick a new data file, it sort of reinitializes this whole setting space. And so it's just very important to understand that if you save this parameter file, if I were to save that, I would go to where I'm working on this, which is in this directory, and I would simply give it some sort of meaningful name for maybe this that.par is sort of the conventional parameter for the SeaDAS software. So I would save that and could come back and load that, and I could add changes, options, and resave it and so on. But if I load it, it's about you're loading parameters for a specific file's processing. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and we will kind of revisit some of this as we walk through the actual production of a level 2 product in the next video.